This Friday, your favorite emotions are back on the big screen in Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2.
It's time to greet your Team Riley! It's anger!
Let me at him!
Fear!
Safety checklist is complete!
Disgust! Ew, ew! Sadness is in the house! Oh, no.
Hello, I'm anxiety. I'm one of Riley's new emotions.
Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2.
There's a part 2? We're going!
Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. Only in theaters Friday. Get tickets now.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to Peak Northwest, an outdoors and travel podcast by the Oregonian and Oregon Live, dedicated to the adventure and exploration of our beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm Jamie Hale.
And I'm Vicki Connor. Together, we take you to some of the most beautiful and interesting destinations in our region, discussing where to go, what to do, and places to see. And today we are back with another episode of My Epic Adventure, where we chat with friends and colleagues about some of their most memorable trips. And this trip in particular is traveling from Seattle to Portland, not by car, not by train, but by bike.
Whew. That's right, Vicki. Seattle to Portland is one of the largest cycling events in the region, drawing upwards of 10,000 participants, and it is a goal that many endurance riders set out to accomplish.
And Jamie, because neither you nor I have participated in this before, we have a special guest joining us on the pod today, someone who is a fixture in the biking community in Portland and on social media, none other than Jenna Phillips, who you might know as Jenna Bikes. Jenna, welcome onto the pod.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Jenna, first off, Seattle to Portland seems scary just to think about. But for those who might not have heard of what this ride exactly is, can you kind of give us a rundown?
Absolutely. It is scary and daunting. We drive that route, we take the train on that route, and it is long. But they really curate a perfect kind of experience for you. You can choose a 2-day or a 1-day. The 1-day is hardcore. I did not do that. I did the 2-day, and it's about 100 miles of biking per day. And the elevation gain is not significant, so it is kind of more achievable, which is awesome. And there's stops every 10 to 20 miles, which is pretty awesome. Food, fuel, aid. It is truly a fully supported situation, which is kind of the best conditions to do such a long journey in. You don't have to carry your own stuff, which a lot of people ask. Some people do carry it, which is another level of hardcore. They carry your stuff for you to the midway point, which is pretty cool. And then you end in Portland, which is so emotional. Going over the Cathedral Bridge and into Portland is just like a dream. So it's very, very cool. And I highly recommend it to any endurance folks who want to really challenge themselves, because it was so rewarding.
Wow. So nice. I'm so curious though, Jenna, what is the route you use for this? I imagine it's probably not like the I-5 corridor.
No. Tragically, they don't close down I-5, which maybe is for the better because it's not very beautiful. You take a lot of kind of these old highways, the orphaned highways that are, north-south running. And most of the time you're on the side of a highway, which isn't super awesome. You are biking with, thousands of other people. So cars are aware, vehicles are aware that you are all coming. And then there's one section, I can't remember where the section is located, but you're on a dedicated biking path for maybe 30, 40 miles, which was really awesome. Super nice. It is more narrow, so people are kind of a little more aggressive with their passing. But yeah, most of the time you're on the side of a small highway, which is not awesome, but you do go through a lot of really cute small towns, and the towns kind of show up in a big way for fundraisers and just to show support for the bikers that are coming through their city, which is really sweet. They all cheer and clap and make noise.
I cannot imagine that energy. Like, so cool. Jenna, this is something I imagine that you trained quite a bit for. So this was in 2023 that you did Seattle to Portland, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, last year.
Okay. So was this like a big goal of yours that you've had for a while? And what did training look like?
It's kind of interesting how it came about. I've, been Jenna Bikes on the internet for a while, primarily doing e-biking and e-commuting, so car replacement biking. I have long distance biked before. My dad is a big road biker, so I kind of grew up around that. And my husband has done Seattle to Portland with my dad before. And this past Christmas, my dad calls us, wishes us Merry Christmas, and then says, "Hey, if Nick wants to do Seattle to Portland, I'll do it with him this year." And I was kind of offended because I'm Jenna Bikes and why don't you invite me? And so I did it a little bit out of spite for my father, who we did do the ride together with, and it was really cool and we got to finish together. But I wanted to prove to myself I can do biking for transportation on an e-bike, and I'm also strong enough to do road biking for sport. And so that January, after Christmas, I got a road bike. And it was a loan from a friend, which was so incredibly nice as I kind of figured out what works for me and what do I want and, how much money do I want to invest. And then from January to the event in July, I just slowly increased my mileage. And I think the first trip I took was January, pouring rain, and I went from Overlook Portland neighborhood all the way to St. John's, and I was like, this is the most I've ever biked. Truly, it's 12 miles round trip. But to do it on a road bike compared to an e-bike felt like a huge accomplishment. And so, the training journey, Cascade Bikes also puts out kind of like a training Excel sheet, which is very formal. And I kind of loosely took that upon myself to, do a big ride every other weekend and just increase slowly. And that helped me so much with the ultimate goal for training that I wanted to do a century by myself. Before the ride, a month out, to prove to myself I could do it in the worst conditions possible by myself, no music, like super boring, and then I could do, the fun event. And it worked out really well.
As you were doing those longer rides, like you said, no music, by yourself, much more mileage. Did you find the experience of biking, your enjoyment of it, or like your relationship to biking, did that feel any different?
That's a super good question. I think I wanted to kind of just keep proving to myself what I was capable of. And so I think my relationship with my body changed the most, of how much I could push myself, how good I could feel even in the worst kind of traditional conditions of elevation or dehydration, and really just showing myself that I was strong and that I was capable. And I think that fueled me through all the other activities and rides.
I know I can remember that these were rides that you posted on your TikTok, Jenna Bikes, as we've mentioned. And I imagine this is something that was probably inspiring to a lot of people who, like you, have, biked around Portland quite a bit for commuting purposes, but making that kind of jump from commuting to like road biking intensity endurance is something that could be a little scary for people.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I was able to show on my TikToks is kind of how that journey goes. So slowly progressing, really taking kind of incremental steps to get to this place. It was really cool to document it over 6 months, which was pretty fun, and make a collection of small bike rides to these bigger, really intense rides. And I was able to also give resources. So in Portland, there's a lot of, more road bikey people, and to kind of connect people on the internet to those people in real life, or connect them to group rides or resources that I use as well. It was really nice to kind of just give a wealth of knowledge out to people.
That's so nice and so helpful that you gave those resources, that you documented this process. I feel like so many people, when it comes to doing big outdoor experiences, like they see someone climb a mountain, they're like, oh, I want to climb a mountain. But there's not a lot of thought all the time of like the whole process it takes to like learning how to do it. Like you said, that slow incremental process to build yourself up there. So I love that you were so transparent about that. Did you get any kind of response from people? Did people sort of see that, and were you engaged with that at all?
Totally. I think if there's one thing that I've taken away from TikTok is that I engage with my followers like to the max. Like I want to respond to every comment. I want to respond with resources and follow-ups. I am a person who kind of needs an example and needs a person to do things with me. My husband is that person for me. He pushes me. He, tells me about new bike routes. He shows me how we can get to the coast without a car, like really critical things to how I navigate my car-free life. And I need that. And I understand a lot of other people might need that too. So I kind of take what he gives me, put it on my spin, and then really get to put it out there for other people. And it's really well received. And it's really, TikTok has been such a kind place to me, which I know is not true for all people on all algorithms, but it's been really supportive. And I truly think what you put out there is what you're going to get back in real life and on the internet, which is really cool.
That's great.
So, Jenna, let's get into this ride a little bit. Did you end up doing this with your husband and your dad?
Yeah, so we set out the first day, and my dad had a friend as well. So there was 4 of us, and they wanted to go fast day one. They were fresh out the gate, going way too fast. So we said goodbye to them. And if anything I learned was to like slow and steady, keep the pace that you can do for 100 miles, and don't burn out, because the excitement of the ride is definitely easy to just go full force and kind of forget those things. So my husband and I had made a pact before that we were going to stick together fully, and he was going to let me set the pace, but he was also going to block the wind for me, which is really nice. He's kind of a taller dude, but he's kind of slim, but it was perfect. So he's going to block my wind, he's going to let me set the pace, and it was perfect. And so day one, we primarily stayed together the entire time. And it was also fun to kind of meet some other people. I did the Cascade Bikes Seattle to Portland ambassadorship, and so I had met a couple other people on the internet, and we ran into each other on the ride and kind of picked people up at different stops, which was really nice. So we had some other company, and you kind of get stuck with certain people, and so you're riding in more of a group setting, which is nice. And then day 2, my dad was hurting. It was not feeling as good as he was day 1. So he was very happy to go our speed and go our pace. And there's a lot, I would say day 2, it felt like there was more clusters. So there's true pace lines of people who are, wanting to go a certain pace that you can join into. But there's also kind of more casual bikers just trying to get to the end. So for a while we were on quite a big pace group with my dad, my husband, and my dad's friend, and it was super, super cool to be with them, especially the second day you're hurting the most. You also end in the heat of the day, and you end on the highway outside of like Scappoose. It's just like terrible conditions. So to have other people who are struggling with you that are going to stay with you and support you is really, really cool.
Well, tell us a little bit about the scenery you passed by. You said there's all these small towns, sort of these more beautiful routes. What was that like?
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, to start off in Seattle and to go around Lake Washington is just really, really beautiful. And that is like right when the sun is rising, which is super cool. After that, for a while, you're kind of on highway roads that are not nearly as beautiful. And then there's a lot of rolling hills day 2, which were super beautiful. You can kind of see these if you're on I-5. If you're heading south, on your right, there's just like hills, and it looks cool. you'll never go over there by car, but on bike, they're just rolling and beautiful, and you can catch your speed going down to go up. And we were cruising. The fastest I've ever gone on any sort of elevation is this just like beautiful, magical place. And there was shade, which was super nice, and we were just trying to live it up as much as we could. And then you kind of get into some more highways, which is not as fun, but ending over the Cathedral Bridge and through, Willamette Boulevard into Portland on these streets that I take when I commute was like the cherry on top. I'm like, oh, I know these roads. Like, this looks familiar. This is great.
Jenna, what does like eating or fueling look like on this ride? Like, are you ever eating an actual meal, or are you just eating those little like gummies or goos or something like that?
Yeah, I had a really, really great internet connection happen in that Scratch, who makes energy fuel, reached out to me and said, can we match you with a nutritionist and just talk nutrition? Like, you're about to embark on this huge endurance journey and we could give you some info. And it was so helpful because the only other person who was doing the endurance things with me is my husband, who could eat nothing and still succeed and do the whole thing, or he could eat a ton and feel like terrible. So he was a terrible reference point for me. And I knew that, I needed to stay hydrated for myself and I needed to stay fueled for myself. So I met with the Scratch nutritionist. They talked about a bottle of water every hour, X amount of carbs every hour. And it was super helpful for me to just kind of put that into my endurance training and just, if I'm going to Kelly Point and back, that's an hour and a half. So I need to fuel at the middle and I need to have this much with me. And so at the beginning, I definitely did more of granola bars, boring snacks. But they also explained a lot of how your body processes food over an extended amount of time. Solid food at the beginning is okay and it's easier to digest. And as you're in your endurance sport for hours, you cannot process such heavy amounts of food, let alone do you want to chew and eat as you're just like exhausted. And so definitely the end of the days were just goos. And it was, goos can be kind of gross when they're hot in the sun, but the caramel ones are good. The chocolate ones are good. A little caffeine boost too, which I think is super important. Like caffeine, sodium, the other things that are found in goo, not just carbs and sugar, also help keep you going for way longer. I always bring like jerky or something savory because I find that a lot of the nutrition for biking is really sweet and I can get just sick of it. So I'll either bring like a Chomps jerky, and I always bring like little chips, like something little fun, little Cheetos or something just to like excite me. And that always helps.
Some Cheetos to offset the goo, perhaps.
Yeah, you need both. It's necessary.
Yeah. That's called balance, and that's part of living. I'm curious. So, I mean, the Seattle to Portland trip, I feel like that's something that car-free people, cyclists, probably like dream about or try to scheme up. Now that you've done that, have you thought about like doing that in a more casual basis? Maybe casual is not the right word, but like, have you thought about doing that? Like, I want to go to Seattle, let's do it by bike this time. Now that you've had that experience.
No, definitely not. I want to tell you yes, and I want to say that would be awesome. No, I think it's so crucial to be fully supported. And I know there's really a lot of people who have done that and have had that experience. There's a group of people, it's usually like less than 10 every year, do PSP, Portland, Seattle to Portland, and they don't sleep. And it's nuts. And they're just, out there to do endurance for endurance sake. And that's not me. I do love to take our bikes to the train station and take the train to Seattle. I find that that's, you get all of the excitement of car-free transportation with like an ounce of the endurance that you need. So I find that that's the perfect combo. Where I can still, we could stop in Centralia, which is usually the middle point for Seattle to Portland on the train, and you could bike around some of these really beautiful areas. So there's opportunities to do a combo, but I don't feel the need to do it again just for funsies. I proved to myself I could do it, and that's a check on a box. And I think it has increased my confidence overall, though, for biking. For example, I went on my first bike camping trip after Seattle to Portland, and it was from our house to LL Stubbs Stewart off of the Banks to Vernonia Trail, and it was awesome. Like 10 out of 10, great experience, and I don't think I would have been able to even conceive that if I hadn't done, something so much more extreme before.
Okay, were you on the same trip with Vicky? Because Vicky, we were just talking about Vicky doing that trip.
I think Jenna must have done this like a year ago, right?
Yeah, it was last year. Yeah,
I did that same trip, not from your house, but from mine, to Stubbs Stewart just a few weeks ago. And
it's so cool.
It's amazing. I loved it so much.
It's so great, and it does like challenge you. It is challenging, but it's not unachievable, which I think is kind of like that sweet spot that I like to hang out in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of like support on this ride, did your bike hold up? Did you get any like flats on this ride? How was that?
No flats, no mechanicals. My husband did break a spoke, and his wheel was untrue. We think before the trip, because day 2 his wheel was like really bent. Luckily, we were out of, must have been just a little past Scappoose, so we were pretty close to Portland. But they have full mechanical support at these bigger stops, and so he got his wheel fixed, wheel trued, all during that stop where we were just kind of hydrating and trying to cool off, which was excellent. But no flat tires on a training ride with the Cycle Cats, who is they're a pretty cool group of people to ride with. I got 3 flats, and it was the first ride I'd ever done in a group. And, I was so anxious, like they're so cool and they do this so all the time. 3 flats. I was like, what's going on? So I think I was, christened by that experience. And so then I was like, oh, okay, nothing could be worse than that.
Okay. Also, I must know, after day 1 and then obviously at the finish line, the longest ride that I've done is probably like 40 miles. And my legs, I probably wasn't fueling correctly, but to get off your bike after these like endurance rides, like first off, your legs feel like absolute noodles. And, and if you didn't fuel correctly, you might be like cramping up. You can't even like stand up straight. How did your legs feel after this?
Yeah, day 1, they were feeling okay. I think also a part of my training, I always tried to push myself a little to do activities after a bike ride that was big, which perhaps is ill-advised, but it kind of prepped me up to, do something after. And so when I did my century by myself, before that, I had done a 50-mile ride the day before with a group. And so just to kind of get the consistency of like bad situation, back to back, I felt okay, which was really good. Definitely fuel and hydration, and then rest and stretching. Usually at the bigger stops, we would kind of have a little stretch break and just like feel your hips out. So you're not truly going 100 miles without stopping and then getting off and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't walk. So that was good. And I think a great tip is just to like use the brakes as you can and just kind of like get off, feel your legs, feel your hips. At the end of they must have had it at the end as well, but at the end of day 1, they also have physical therapists, massage folks who are there in case of, a cramp or something really serious. So that is also a really nice resource to have in that fully supported model, which is great.
So nice to have all those resources.
Totally.
Oh, gosh.
I know you have to pay to enter, but I do think it is worth it when you look at everything you're getting.
For sure.
Well, the next Seattle to Portland ride is coming up in just about a month, July 13th to 14th. Do you have any advice to folks who are about to embark on that journey this year?
Well, you're about a month out, so I recommend trying a century. Push yourself, see if you can do it. Doesn't matter how long it takes. My century took an entire day, and there was rain and hail and sun, and it was terrible, but I did it. And, adjust from there of what you need to do to be more stable, more steady, more hydrated, more fueled, and then make adjustments.
Perfect.
I won't be doing it this year, but I feel like maybe next year I could see myself potentially doing this. Yeah.
It's so rewarding, and it's such a huge accomplishment, and I feel like there's so much community around the event. Even though it's 2 days, it's just there's so many people going through it with you, and it's really, really cool.
As somebody who does not bike at all, I'm just so impressed by all of you who do these really impressive endurance events. I'm impressed with people like, bike to work. So the fact that you're doing these, Seattle to Portland, or even like, the Stub Stewart, the bike packing, all of this stuff, it's super cool. And it's always fun to hear about these great adventures that you go on. So thanks for sharing all this with us, Jenna.
Thanks for having me.
Well, folks, that will do it for us for today. Until next time, you can watch our videos on the Oregonians YouTube channel and view all of our travel and outdoors coverage on OregonLive.com/travel, as well as HereIsOregon.com.
Please leave us a rating or review if you enjoy the show. And if you want to support this podcast as well as our local journalism, please consider a subscription to Oregon Live. You can find details at OregonLive.com/pod support. Also, if you're a fan of the show and you're interested in potentially sponsoring it, you can get in touch with our marketing people at advertise@oregonian.com. This episode of the show was produced by me, Vicki Connor, alongside Jamie Hale.
Stay safe and happy travels, everyone. Until next time, we leave you with this 10 seconds of Zen.